you're having to like, okay, like this is how we set ourselves up for success. This is how I'm setting myself up for success. And like having those conversations can be awkward and challenging. But like I think that's the only way we get out of this. At some point we need to turn around and parent the generation above us. And
like what we feel about family, we transition to God. Mm-hmm. But in this case, I think it's working kind of bidirectionally. As what we're feeling about God, we also transition to family. Whereas we might feel like, hey, if I pour into you in this moment, I'm expecting that the next time that I need somebody to pour into me, or I need something, that you're able to do that as well. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of TDY. I am your host, Winston, but you could call me Winnie. And man, I got my sister in the room, man. So listen, this particular episode, I want to be very candid about. This particular episode is going to touch on like some familial stuff. If it's a sensitive issue for some people, honestly heal, but don't feel like offended, like it's not something to be triggered about. But it's gonna be good. Thank you for everybody tuning in, and let's jump into it. So I want to introduce my sister to y'all. For those that don't know, she is a published poet. She is a masterful marketer. She has a lot of perspective, a lot of life experience. And for those that have not met her already, welcome to the stage. How's it going?
Pretty good.
You doing
Pretty good? Yeah. I obviously didn't expect to be here today, but I'm Emerald. You could call me Gem. I'm super excited to be a part of this and to be having this particular conversation with my brother. A conversation that we've had maybe 1 billion times, and I'm excited to hear the godly perspective on it. I think that's gonna
it's gonna be fun.
Yeah. that'll be useful.
So the context that Emma's not giving you is the fact that we didn't know that we was gonna have this today. Is what I'm trying to say to you. Like she came to visit, and G was setting up, and it was just like perfect timing. It's like, we just had a conversation similar to this. Like, suit up, like let's do this thing. So yeah, it's gonna be dope. It's gonna be dope to work through. The first thought that comes to mind immediately off rip is like, when you hear family and finances, it's always, I won't say always, it should be moving linearly forward. The trajectory of that should be going forward, right? It's always generational. So when you think family and finances, you think the parents are storing up for their children, their grandchildren, et cetera, et cetera. Pretty much money is moving forward.
Yep.
A lot of the times what we have in the cultural context that we come from is money moves backwards. It's the kids, it's the parents sacrificing to take care of the kids, which sacrificing is kind of crazy to me because they chose to do this, right? So it's like, you're not sacrificing for us. You're actually just
being a parent.
You know what I'm saying? Or like just doing what you're living the consequences of your actions.
Yeah.
Whether positive or negative, like those are the consequences, right? But it's always, when I get to a point, I'm going to be able to take care of my family because they took care of me growing up. And I want to frame that in, I want to talk about that. I think that there's space for both, but I think that one has been severely over-indexed on in comparison to the other one. So I want to open up with that particular conversation first.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is the mentality that we've adopted? And what can we do if it's not the right one? What can we do to start adjusting it?
Yeah. I was reading a research paper recently. That is I think that's where I get most of my new information on. I want things to be like thoroughly researched. And they said
I go on TikTok.
Yeah, I mean that's fair too. They said that in developing countries, right? Like we don't like to use the word third world anymore, but in developing countries, the cultural context that we come from, there is a collectivist mentality, meaning what you have is not for you; it is for the society at large. Everything that you are, the person that you have become, is for the good of everybody, like regardless of like what you need, you know, like you take exactly what you need and then you give to everybody. Whereas in the West, in America and Europe, right, it's more of an individualist society, right? Like I make money, I work hard to make space for myself, right, to give myself the things that I want, and whatever is left, you know, I'm willing to share, but first it's me, right? Um, and I think we're getting conflicting messages. Those of us that come from collectivist societies, but have grown up in a more individualist society, we're looking around at our friends and like our loved ones and like their families, right, and seeing like a different message of what familial giving and sharing is, and so it causes like a disconnect and a conflict, and like how am I supposed to be doing this, right? Like what's the right way to share with family and also take care of myself? I don't have an answer to that, but
I think I do, and
please.
I think you do too, because I just don't think that it's the answer that I just don't think that it's the answer that the generation before us. You see how I'm
It's
gracefully anonymizing.
That's good. That's
right?
nice.
I don't think it's how the generation before us would want us to answer. Because if we think about it once again, the let's just put on our biblical bifocals, right? Like the Bible never talks about like when we talk about like generational wealth and like when we talk about like generational finances, it really does not talk about moving money backwards, right? It's always like the good man stores up an inheritance for his children's children, right? Like what the Bible, there's one instance that I could particularly remember right now of the Bible talking about familial finances, and it's actually moving backwards. It's when Jesus was addressing the Pharisees, and he talks about how the Pharisees are telling people to like pay money to the church instead of taking care of their parents, right? Instead of honoring their parents in that sense, honoring them financially. That's like the only instance that's really coming to my mind. So because it's mentioned there, we can't eliminate it. Yeah. Like we can't say that there's no place for it, right? But when we actually talk about like building something up, like the way that I think about it is, as we are right now, we have seeds, right? We have seeds that if planted will grow into trees. If given enough time, this seed will become a fruit that will be able to feed you and sustain not just you, but many more people for a longer period of time. So if you're asking me for my seed, you better be dying. You better need this to survive past tomorrow, because at that point, what you're doing is you're not necessarily just taking the seed away, you're taking forests away. Do you see what I'm saying? I think that's the impact of it that I think of. Like if I were to put $10,000 away right now and not touch it for 100 years, think about how many of my great grandchildren I could put through college with that. And that's my worry when it comes to and we've only talked about the parental aspect of it. We haven't even talked about like the sibling aspect, right, or the peer aspect of it as well.
Yeah, I mean, that framing of like, if you're taking this away, you're taking away a forest. Like that is, I think that was like particularly impactful for me. Like it's interesting to consider that like me giving you this like $1,000, $100, whatever, takes away the like the ability for that to grow, right? In the same way, and I think my programming, right, is like it comes back up immediately, and I'm like, okay, but they they gave up so much. They gave up so much, and yeah, like if I have leftover to go on a vacation or eat an extra meal, should I not then be giving that back?
Mm.
Like, should I be having fun when they are stressed? Am I allowed to do that? I can take care of like my needs and like the things that need to be done. My bills are paid, but am I allowed to enjoy the fruits of my labor if the people that helped take care of me, the generation above me, if they are stressed out about it?
Yeah. I would argue yes and no.
Yeah.
I would argue yes if it's done with tact, and if it's done like spirit led with conviction and consideration.
Mm.
I would argue no if it's done in excess, if it's done in flex. Like there should never be a time where somebody needs something from you and you want something and you get your want to cover a need.
How do you, when do the needs stop? Like, how do you define a need, right? Like,
Yeah.
I know a lot of people, I think, like familiarly, who will define a need with broad parameters.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yep.
and then you or will flat out lie about a need. And then
Yeah.
you're kind of left like weighing that and trying to like decide what your
Yeah. No, I think that's literally it. So there's a principle in like Acts 2, right, where it talks about how the church, when the church was forming, they came together and they had everything in common. They were meeting in everybody's individual homes and there was breaking of the bread, right? So what does that mean? That means that they were meeting in everybody's individual homes, but they had everything in common and they were sharing bread, breaking bread one another with one another, right? So that means that there was still an aspect of individualism and ownership, right? But there was this aspect of collectivism. So it's never a black and white situation. It's always a tension that you have to hold, right? If we even in take a step back behind that and we look at how Jesus, right, like operated with his family. Jesus was dying on the cross. Jesus dying on the cross. He looks over to John, his disciple, his most beloved disciple, looks at his mom and says, "John, this is your mom now." Right? So like this dude is dying on the cross, right? And what are we like? We're stressed about our 9 to 5s, or we're stressed about like our families. Like there's an aspect of this awareness outside of yourself, right? And this divine, like this care that you have to have regardless of what you're going through. But once again, if we look at it from the perspective of we both took financial analysis, right? So like the value of something right now, right, is I believe the present value of a stock is equal to the future value of all the current cash flows.
Yep.
Right. So if I'm looking at doing something for $1,000, $10,000, $100,000, it's not actually 10,000, 100,000. You know, it's the present value of all the future cash flows. You know what I'm saying? So it's the opportunity cost is essentially what I'm referring to right now that will be lost. And what I'm worried about is that opportunity cost loftier than this current need right now?
Yeah.
And most times the opportunity cost is not loftier than the current need. Most times what happens is the need is masked with a more with a deeper need, I'll say.
Yeah.
The presented need that we are that we are tempted to just throw a quick fix at, right? Sprinkle some money over, is actually maxed with a deeper, more crucial issue to resolve.
That part.
And we have to enable with self-agency rather than enabling with crutches, handouts,
Yeah.
types of situations like that.
Yes. I mean, I couldn't agree more about the agency part. Like, I think, and that is the challenging bit, right? Like figuring out like how to teach a man to fish, right? Especially like the people that taught like
you to fish.
That, you know what I mean? Like made you people, and then you're having to like, okay, like this is how we set ourselves up for success. This is how I'm setting myself up for success, and like having those conversations can be awkward and challenging.
Yeah.
But like I think that's the only way we get out of this. At some point we need to turn around and parent the generation above us, and be able to like, you need an investment account, right? Like, okay, you haven't really saved for retirement. This is how we do that, right?
Because I think what happens is like as time progresses, information becomes more disseminated and it becomes more widely available. But the older generation, they came up knowing one thing, like you work, you get a pension, or you work, you get, they don't know the different avenues that are available. And especially when, let's add, you're doing it by yourself, or let's add, you're doing it with multiple children now, or extenuating circumstances, and you have to laser focus on one thing. I think what happens is everything else kind of falls to the wayside.
Yeah.
Right. The idea about personal agency and self-agency, I'm going to play devil's advocate on this because I know that this is like just a subject that you're personally passionate about too. When I hear self-agency, I can't picture anybody saying that's not wearing like a Make America Great Again hat. You know what I'm saying? That's talking about how the blacks need to
pull themselves up.
You know what I'm saying? So like, how do we reconcile that idea of self-agency for a group that honestly is just not equipped to do it by themselves, and then also juxtaposition that with, the assistance of the, hate to say it like this, but like the superior, the ruling class.
Yeah.
How do you balance that?
Burkina Faso and Mali are doing something really incredible right now.
Okay.
I'll use them as an example.
You're going to have to say that again. Who's doing something?
Burkina Faso. It is a West African country that was colonized by the French. Burkina Faso.
Copy.
You got it. B-U-R.
I'm not going to say, you're not going to catch me out here slipping. Let's say it again.
Burkina. Burkina Faso.
Burkina Faso?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a country in West Africa. It's next to Mali and Senegal.
I didn't know that.
Okay. They have a new president right now. This African dude. Well, yeah, obviously he's he's.
And Africa's a continent, by the way, guys.
Yeah.
It's a continent.
And he's like incredibly passionate about this subject, like empowering people while making sure that their needs are met. Right. I hate to quote Marx, but I'm gonna quote Marx right now.
Okay.
You cannot teach a man to fish while he starves.
Didn't Tupac say something like that?
He was quoting Marx.
Okay.
But yeah, right? Like people's material basics, foundational needs must be met before we start layering on teaching. And you taught me this, like in dealing with the younger generation, actually, right?
I love it. Yeah.
Dealing with the younger gen, like you have to like make sure that they are at a base level okay before you start trying to like change behavior or like give them tools to like to improve, right? And so I think that's the path that we have to take with self-agency, and that's what Mali and Burkina Faso are doing right now. So they are they have social programs, right, where there's state-owned banks, there's state-owned healthcare, you have a base level of you can eat, and somebody will like take care of your wounds.
Mm-hmm.
At a base, like, you can survive. You know, we will make sure that you have a place to lay your head
Mm-hmm.
and to eat and live, and like, as a requirement for all of these programs, you must educate yourself. Like, you must go to school. We will provide avenues for you to go to school.
Mm.
We will offer everything on a platter, but you must take that step.
What would make somebody want to take that step if there's no
If their material needs are met, if there's no, yeah, I think this is a misconception that a lot of us have about human nature in general. I'm a firm believer that people want to be better. I'm a firm believer that people want to stand on their own 2 feet. I don't think that like most people want to eat the same bowl of rice and live in the same social housing for the rest of their lives. There are probably some people that do. There are. But I think most people want to own their lives. Most people want to build,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and once they are comfortable and out of fight or flight, like once they can breathe and sit down, take a pragmatic look at their lives, you know, and are able to formulate a plan, I think most people want to take that step. I believe that with everything in my being. Like, that is my politic, and that is how that's how I try to apply to my family. I need to believe that you are okay. Base level. You have a place to sleep. You have food. You are cared for in that way. And now, let's talk about what you're going to do to make sure that this never happens again.
Feel that. Yeah, I would agree with that as well. I would agree with that premise that like most people the majority of people want something more than just the basic that is afforded to everybody. So I definitely agree with that. What I'm struggling to wrap my head around right now, particularly, is what happens, like with me, for example. A lot of the drive and ambition that I feel myself having to curb a lot of the time to be like a fully functioning like dad and Christian and husband comes out of the lack growing up.
Mm-hmm.
So there is an aspect of deficiency breeding ambition, right? Lack breeding drive. I'm not saying that there's people that make it from, you know, riches to riches, right? But the story there is rags to riches for a reason. What would have to be missing for that person to maintain that drive that ultimately sustains? Because there's one thing to accelerate, but then there's another thing to like cruise, right? What is missing for that person to not just accelerate but to cruise?
Yeah. So, you know, I think like, we grew up in the same family.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, pretty much. Yeah,
Like, we were like a year and change apart, right?
Facts.
So we came up kind of exactly the same
Literally
way.
exactly the same.
And then I look at other members of our family who grew up maybe a little cushier.
Yeah, our younger siblings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, maybe things
softer.
were just a touch softer for them, you know, in terms of what they were responsible for and what was asked of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I see like that lack of ambition in some places, that lack of like internal drive.
Mm-hmm.
And I see a general contentedness that I have not been able to achieve.
That part.
Like, they just know how to be
Okay.
Like, they are happy, you know, like, really, like, they can be comfortable. Like they are okay to sit in a job for 2 years, something that I genuinely have to force myself to
Feel
do.
that.
And sometimes contentedness is important. You know, I think I want to like reframe like what might be missing to like what do you miss when you lack?
Mm. What do you miss when you lack?
Like what do you lose out on when you have that lack? Like when you are not taken care of on a base. Ambition is good.
Mhm.
Yes, but like so is being well.
Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
you as like a dad and a Christian and a general member of society, you are having to put away parts of that ambition because you realize that it's not conducive.
Yeah. It's not healthy. So it's I've had this conversation at nauseum with my wife because was of the mindset where I'm like, I gotta find a way to introduce some artificial struggle to these little kids that I'm raising.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not trying to raise no punks type thing. Like maybe I'll just leave them on the street one day and like ask them to find their way back home or something, just to like spice things up in the struggle department, because I feel like the struggle really helped me. What I realized is a lot of these positive attributes, or these seemingly positive attributes, are actually trauma responses.
Mm-hmm.
And when we realize that a lot of this stuff is a trauma response rather than like a genuine like positive trait that has developed, you start looking at it a little bit different, right? I believe where was it? It's either Hebrews or Romans. I don't really remember right now, but it pretty much says like, don't worry about anything, don't be anxious for nothing, for tomorrow has problems on its own, right? So I'm thinking about like, oh, how am I going to introduce artificial struggle to my children? And the Bible is telling me,
Don't worry about it.
don't worry about it. Like, don't trust me. Tomorrow's gonna have its own problems.
Yeah.
You don't have to make any more. Like,
Yep.
they gonna be okay.
Mm-hmm.
There's this notion that I have now come to terms with, where it's like my seemingly positive traits are actually handicaps in a sense.
Yep.
And it has pushed me to not necessarily want to heal from those handicaps, and rather just trauma bond with other people in those same handicaps. We have entire groups centered around financial freedom, financial independence. We have entire communities. We have billions of dollars poured into industries and marketing, like for that specific niche of person, right? Um, what would happen if those people got healed? Disappear,
Yeah.
right? Like this kind of bleeds into like another conversation on like the importance of like healing, and why people don't want people to get healed.
Mm.
There was a slave in the New Testament, right? I believe the apostles were preaching, going town to town preaching, and this slave was she had, the Bible says she has a spirit of divination in her, and she was able to fortune tell, and she was controlled by some man who was profiting off of her healing, right? When when the apostles walked past and recognized this, they healed her, they casted the spirit out of her. But it says that her owner pretty much was upset with them, because even though they healed her, he lost his money bag. My question is, what would happen if we actually focused on healing rather than just money bags? Right? Like,
Yeah.
how would lives change? Like, pornography would not be a thing if people healed, right? Like, toxic masculinity would not be a thing if people healed. This incessant desire for money, status, and privilege would not be a thing if people healed. Like, why aren't people focused on healing rather than focused on addressing these symptoms? Why are we focused on symptoms rather than the
I mean,
cure?
I think everything in our society, like every message we get drives us to forego healing. Right? Like everything I for a very long time, I believed that if I got better, if I took my own foot off of my neck, that nobody would hire me. That I wouldn't be useful to my family.
Interesting.
If I relax, if I figure out how to rest, how to prioritize my health, how to care for myself, I will not be useful. And more than anything, being useful is the goal.
Yeah.
That is the message that I've gotten my entire life.
That part.
Well, you just read a message I wrote to myself at 13.
Can I read it?
Go for it.
Can I read it?
Yeah.
Okay, so y'all, no, like, and we don't plan this because. So listen,
Literally,
when I be pulling books off the shelf, they be thinking I planned that. We didn't plan this. Y'all ready? This is the book. My sister was published in high school, y'all. I didn't even know her name was in this book. I swear to you. But apparently, it's literally in the first page. It's called The Future. But here's a note that she wrote to herself. At what age?
I was freshman year of high school, so I was 13. I skipped a grade.
Yeah, she's really proud about that. So like this is like how a 13-year-old 15 years ago thought. God damn, 15 years.
A little longer than that.
16 years ago.
Probably 30.
Golly. So listen, one day I will do something great. My motivation is not fame, but legacy. I want to leave my mark. I want my name to go down in history as an advocate. I want to change something, anything. I believe in faith. I believe with enough faith and enough effort, I am capable of anything. I used to tell people when I grow up, I still don't know what this word means.
Change the world?
Change the world. It looks like an M.
Oh.
I want to mend the world.
Yeah.
Mend the world. I want to mend the world. Back then, it was a joke, but now I'm serious. I want to be the person with the most influence on the world as a whole. I believe that goal is achievable. I don't say this because I think I'm worthy of such accolades, but I believe that the God I serve hears and understands me. I believe I can be great. Emerald Onyuoma One there. Like, that's heavy.
13.
For a 13-year-old.
You know? And like, I carried that with me. And I'm not even gonna lie, a part of that, like, a part of me still carries that. Like, that is a part of the healing work that I have to do, taking the literal weight of the world off of my shoulders.
Yeah.
You know, like, for a long time, I believed that I had failed in life because I'm almost 30 and I haven't changed the world yet. And that is like, that's a definition of unwell, right? Like, that is what a hefty weight.
Yeah.
To place on oneself, you know, like that obsession with greatness, with utility, with achievement, whatever that means. Like, I didn't consider having a family that loves me, having a job that fulfills me, that I enjoy, that none of those feel like achievements.
So if you would have changed the world at 21 but died,
that would have been enough for me.
So here's my thing. I think I've also spoken about this a lot on this podcast, but there's an aspect of like selfish sacrifice, right? Like, I routinely ask myself, would Martin Luther King or would Martin Luther King's kids want to be Martin Luther King's kids, or would they just want to be like Martin's kids? And I think the answer to that would be they would just probably want to be Martin's kids, right? If they were raised by their dad, that probably would have just been enough for them. I remember when Malachi was born, I had to strip off remember all the startups that I was a part of?
Yeah.
And I literally like tried to shut all of them down and literally escaped to Alabama to just focus on raising my family. Because what I realized, and this goes into another topic too, is that's really like, that is okay. Like, that enough legacy there is okay. How many stories have you heard where it's just like, yeah, my grandfather did this, and because of that, my dad did this, and because my dad did this, I changed the world. It starts from somewhere. Like, a generational curse is nothing more than an opportunity presented to fall into line with what your parents did. And a generational blessing is the exact same thing. An opportunity to fall into line with what your parents and forefathers did.
I think watching you be a parent has been so healing for me. Man. And I don't know if I've ever told you that.
Man.
It has been, I mean, it's like, it's genuinely been an honor, right? Like, to watch you like just decide to to like move forward with love, to heal yourself so that your children don't grow up with that.
Man.
Malachi came up to you upstairs and says, I need a hug. And you just sat there and hugged him. And there's no part of my childhood that I felt that I could do that. And that is, I mean, what an incredible achievement.
Man. Can I be completely honest?
Please.
When Malachi was first born, my motivation was to be better than my father.
It doesn't take much.
And as noble as that sounds, I want to be better than, I want to do more than, that is the same exact trauma that you're operating out of, that I was operating out of to be successful in life, to be like financially successful as well. And like, I would notice when I'm staying up late at night, like with Malachi, I took the first shift, right? So I was working, I was still working, but I pretty much was with him 10 to 4 a.m. When I'm doing that, I was mad as hell, pissed. And the only thing that kept going through my mind was like, I bet your dad would be asleep right now. I bet your dad. And like, I had to like realize, like, I'm holding my son, rocking him, trying to put him to sleep, mad at my dad because he didn't do this to me. I'm like, cousin, trauma. Come on, bro, trauma. You got to heal past that. And while I won't front, I don't think I'm fully healed of my daddy issues yet. I can at least now be a father, not out of spite to my father. That was a huge burden being released to me. And that is one of the things that I learned this year that I feel like has changed the dynamic of my entire relationship with Malachi. I'm no longer parenting out of a lack, out of spite, or out of some sort of vendetta to prove my father wrong.
Let me take us back to our topic.
Oh shit, yeah. Shoot.
Faith and finance. The exact same idea has me giving angrily. Just livid. You know, I am so upset, but I'm giving because I want to prove that despite what you thought about me, I've done the thing. I am good enough, actually. And I have, I have done it. And so, yeah, take it. You need it? Yeah, take it. I'm going to give before you even ask because I'm so good. I'm so great that like, I don't need anything. And that's not working.
No. I mean, it works.
Sure. It gives me like the pat on the back that I'm looking for in the moment. And then I'm left with just lingering resentment.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's exactly how I feel too sometimes. And I feel there's also like a survivor's guilt. It's like, but I can, so why wouldn't I?
Exactly.
You know, now I'm like budgeting for it, and not just budgeting financially. Like yeah, we framed it in like finances, but this is like effort and like mental bandwidth too, like and emotional like capacity too that we are like allocating to people in our lives. It's like, yeah, I budget for this. Like, I go to sleep early expecting calls the next day. You know what I'm saying? Like, I want to be rested for this. Like, I'll go to the gym so I could build up enough testosterone so I could take this conversation. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it's not healthy for us, even though it might feel healthy for the other person. And another thing that I just want to touch on really quickly, on like the importance of therapy, because I feel like a lot of things can be therapeutic, but aren't necessarily therapy.
Yeah.
You know, so like if we are maintaining conversations and we are continually like pouring and giving and doing all that stuff, right? Pretty much paying back or reciprocating like the effort and energy and stuff that was poured into us growing up. While that might feel therapeutic to the other person, or even therapeutic to us, I don't necessarily constitute that as as working.
No.
Because like you said, it always leaves that lingering resentment there as well.
Something you said before we started recording, you were reading a book, War of Gods.
God's at war.
God's at war.
Mm-hmm.
Can you repeat the definition for an idol?
Yeah. An idol is anything that requires your praise. No, anything that requires your sacrifice, right? Anything that requires your time, and anything that you praise, pretty much, or anything that you like esteem highly. That would be what an idol is. Something that requires your time, requires a sacrifice, and anything that you esteem very highly.
When you said that, I immediately went, I mean, like, that's a lot of my family members.
That part.
And it leaves no time for my own spiritual well-being, because my budget, like so much of my budget, mental budget, emotional budget is going, I have to stay 10 toes in like praising you, because if I dip on that even a little bit, I'm not willing to bear the consequences. This relationship requires nothing but sacrifice. This is not a two-way street. It's 100% sacrifice. And too much of my time.
Yeah. So, okay. So this is what we have, right? I'm looking at it like I'm watching a movie right now. When God said, "Thou shalt not have any other gods before me," he's not talking about sequential. Sorry, so he's not saying like, I don't want any other gods
in front of me.
He's saying before me, like in my presence. So he's saying at all, right? So he's not like saying, yeah, you could worship me second as long as, like, or you could worship me first as long as money is second and, your family is third. He's saying like, no, like you worship me, that's it, nobody else, right? And what we're not saying is that anything that requires a sacrifice is an idol. What we are saying is that anything that requires a sacrifice in excess or in place of what we should be sacrificing to God is an idol. So based off of that, there's an aspect of giving or doing as unto God. Right? That's like a very biblical concept. Like anything that you do, whether you eat or drink, I think what's 1 Corinthians, whether you eat or drink, do it unto the glory of God. So there's an aspect of just doing things, or we are created for good works that he has, predestined for us to do. There's an aspect of doing good things for God. And then there's an aspect of doing good things like with God. Right? I think that what we should be worried about is doing good things with God and not necessarily for. Because when we do good things for, it eliminates the heart of why we actually do it. And a lot of times that's what I do, is I do good things for. I work hard for God. I do this for God's approval. I do this for family's approval, right? What I should really start focusing on going into 2025 is being able to spot it a little bit better and do things with God.
Give me an example.
Do you remember when I was the youth pastor at STF?
Yeah.
My Sundays would literally start at 7 a.m. I would have to pick up students, bring them to church, after church, buy bagels for them, all on my dime, take them back home, play basketball after. My Sundays were literally 7 to 8 p.m., 7 to 9 p.m. sometimes, right? And I did that every week in and week out, with the expectation that as I am putting in this effort, I'm storing up like a spiritual bank account that I can call on and that I could like withdraw from when necessary. I actually even remember making a specific prayer. I was at Geek Squad, and I used to work at Geek Squad, and I accidentally wiped somebody's computer. Brand new. They brought it in to fix it. I accidentally wiped it from scratch, right? And the prayer that I prayed was, God, you've seen everything that I've done for you. Can you do this one thing for me? Please don't let me get fired. That was the actual prayer that I prayed. The dude came back. He was like, oh, thank goodness you wiped it. I really appreciate that. So in my mind, I'm like, that John worked. That prayer worked, right? What it took me a few years to realize was that the motivation or the rationale behind what I was doing was not rooted in the heart of who God is.
Yeah.
It says that for God so loved the world that he gave. It didn't say that he gave. It didn't say that he gave to show the world that he loved. It said because he loved, he did this. So the action comes out of a response, comes as a response to the initial feeling, right? To the conviction, to the faith, to the feelings that you have for the person. My feelings, my actions showed that my feelings about God was that he was a slot machine, that he was an ATM that I deposited in and I was able to withdraw from. So I feel like in the same sense, we might be transitioning those same feelings. I think it actually works the other way. Like what we feel about family, we transition to God. But in this case, I think it's working kind of bidirectionally. As what we're feeling about God, we also transition to family. Whereas we might feel like, hey, if I pour into you in this moment, I'm expecting that the next time that I need somebody to pour into me or I need something, that you're able to do that as well. And I think that might be like a motivation, very like transactional style relationships. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Sneeze.
There's an element of like transactional love that I am definitely working to unlearn. And I think it's like bi-directional generationally as well. I think for a long time I felt like I need to earn the love of the generation above me.
Yeah.
And everything I do is to earn that love.
I still feel that way sometimes.
And
yeah, and it's not like a knock. Like, please don't we're not like shitting on our parents or nothing like that.
No,
this is like,
a cultural
exactly.
Across, you can talk to anybody with
literally talk to any Nigerian.
Yeah, it's the same deal. Pretty much. I feel like any immigrant, honestly. Like
that part. Yeah.
Yeah,
I want to say American too.
Yeah. Okay. See, like.
Okay.
Yeah, I know and love a lot of Black Americans that deal with the exact same thing. I'm not actually like I don't know like what that thing is.
Yeah.
That we're all fighting with there, but
can I chime in,
please?
Yeah. Maybe at least from my standpoint, I think it's a little bit of two things. I think it's culture versus community, because family are very culture oriented, which is family first, family first, family first. When we grow up in that, we go out into the world. If we do well, now our big influence is our community, because everybody around us is making the same money. And it's like money is community. And when we go back to culture, it's family, everybody. So that's an internal pull for people who make money. And then I think the second thing, which is universal, I think is the coming of age. It's just coming of age. It's like that transition from I'm not a kid anymore to I'm an adult. It's very difficult. And some people don't do it gracefully. Some people don't do it great. So, and some people, I think, and I can say that I'm guilty of this, and I want to hear what y'all think about it. When I was transitioning from a kid, teenager, young adult to an adult who don't need my mama at all, like I pushed at her, like in a sense to like, not to shame her for not doing a great job, because she did the best job she could, but to say that I got this now and I didn't do it in the best way. So but I don't think it's a Nigerian thing. I think that's an everybody thing.
Good.
I think it's an everybody thing.
Good. Ooh, yeah, no, that
yeah.
that does make me feel better. I think a lot of what I do right now is out of guilt for how I handled that transition.
That part.
I mean, talk about ungraceful, you know. I sprinted as far as I could, and I on the way out, you know. I made it as hot as because I was so angry. I was so angry at feeling like I had to do everything.
I think my transition was very similar, and I think that we've kind of talked about like the similarities between me leaving and like my dad leaving as well. It almost felt like two like male figures like left, and I did mine very ungracefully. I did mine the way that every 22-year-old operates as well.
Yeah.
But like recognizing how ungraceful like our initial departures are, do you think that there is just some forgiving of ourselves that we have to come to terms with, or do you think that there is still recompense that we have to pay for like our initial blunders?
I mean, I think we did what kids do, you know, and I like to think of it like, if my younger sibling behaved the way that I behaved, how would I react? And if they were at all remorseful, I'm dropping it immediately, because the love I have for them, completely unconditional. And I'm struggling to give myself that same love.
The love you have for others, you're struggling to give to yourself as well. There's something there.
Yeah.
There's something there. What I'm thinking right now is, because like as a parent as well, I could imagine, like I routinely put myself in my parents' position because, you know, I feel like I'll be there as well. Let's say Malachi grows up and I've done everything in my power to give him the best possible life. I'm gonna mess up, obviously, because we're human. I don't think that the biggest parental sin is anything that you can do per se. I think it's the denial of things that you did do. I think the biggest parental sin is the pride, thinking that you did things right or you did your best job, without admitting that even though you did your best job, because a lot of our parents are absolutely doing the absolute best that they could, but when your top full absolute best is 64%, that is still a D minus. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So there's always something that's going to be missing there. And I routinely think to myself, like, how am I going to handle when Malachi calls me out on my deficiencies? What am I going to do? What am I going to say? And it shapes how I interact with him right now, for sure, because I'm like, let's say I lose my temper and I smack him one day.
Yeah.
Right? Or I lose my temper, and we don't hit our kids, but like, let's say I lose my temper and I do something, and like, I don't know, I hurt him or I give him a scar or something, and he calls me out on that, right? Like, what is my response going to be along the lines of like, well, you deserved it, like trying to justify and rationalize it, or am I just going to be like wholly apologetic and fully like completely accept it? And how does that influence how I make my decision now, knowing that in the future I can either be 10 toes down on it, or I can be, you know, this is something that I completely regret and hope that I don't do anymore. And I try and I take that same position to how I look at the generation before us. Let's say Malachi does something to me now, or like I do something to my parent now or my grandparent now, and you know, Malachi or his kids do it to me now. Like, how would I feel if that occurred? And is this the same feeling that I'm causing to, you know, the generations before us? I just try and be like introspective in that sense, and I think it shapes a lot of the things and the ways that I interact with them.
Yeah.
but I can't not maintain healthy boundaries to prevent against a hypothetical scenario.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I get it.
I heard somebody say that anxiety is you using energy to prevent against something that has not happened.
Hmm.
You're using real energy for imaginary problems.
Well,
And it's like, damn.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's God, I hate that. But that's no,
right?
I mean that's the truth, right? Like, and I think a lot of how I manage family questions, like there's a lot of how I manage finances and family especially, is I'm solving for an imaginary problem, or I'm feeling anxious about something that hasn't exactly happened. I'm giving you this money, or I'm being proactive in taking care of you and taking care of your finances, whatever, because of a situation that like might not even be happening, because of a conversation that I'm having in my head, because of my own stuff, my childhood or trauma that I'm dealing with. Like, I feel like I have to take food out of my own mouth, or take rest
Perhaps.
out of myself to deal with that. And a lot of the anxiety I experience is like nobody. Sometimes they ask. Sometimes they put that anxiety on, but I have agency.
Yeah. That part. So like we've talked about a lot.
So much.
So much. So
Yeah.
much. What I want to do is like I want to almost give like a call to action, like sort of like synopsis, wrap up, call to action. Because I think that it is easy to hear a conversation like this, whether you're a parent or whether you are, a child experiencing something like this, and be triggered.
Mm-hmm.
What I would encourage people watching to do is be a little bit more introspective, like actually think to yourself which parts of this apply to me. And if you're feeling triggered, it's probably because like something has nicked you, like it applies to you. Right? It's the exact same analogy that I gave about walking hand in hand with somebody and they rub you and it causes you a crazy amount of pain. The pain is because of a wound that hasn't healed. Right? So whether this is you know giving to your siblings, whether this is giving to your grandparents, your parents, whether this is giving to your spouse, right? Like we didn't even talk about like prenups or like anything, any like financial protections that need to go on. We didn't talk about like generational and family planning in terms of like estates and wills and all of that, which is hugely important, especially in our community. Life insurance, for example. Let me tell you a story. I have a friend whose parent did not have life insurance.
Brother.
Does not have life insurance. Did not care to even do it. After winning a settlement of about $100,000, this person still chose to not invest in their family's future after they were gone. Asked for a $30,000 to $40,000 funeral. Friend is like, are you out of your cotton picking mind?
Yeah.
This is not happening. You're getting cremated. Family disruption. How dare you cremate my da 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 da? They asked for this. They asked for this. They asked for it, but they did absolutely nothing to present that. They had the settlement. They could have bought life insurance. They did all of this, but now you want me to come out of my pocket for 30, 40 bands to bury somebody that is dead, right? Instead of what I can afford, which is cremation. I think stuff like that is actually insane. Like I hear stories like that and I'm like, first of all, I'm sorry that you lost your parent, but like I'm also sorry that you're experiencing this and your parent did not plan for the future. like that. So all that to say, like, regardless of like how triggering this may be for you, just be introspective, think through it, and process it in therapy, in prayer, and in community as best as you can.
Hey, I have a.
Please.
I'm sorry. So I feel like we're winding down. I do want to say two things real quick. Winston is 1 for 2 on the scriptures.
Right.
So it's Philippians 4:6. Says, be anxious for nothing, but in everything in prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known unto God.
Fact.
So you close, New Testament. All right. You
What did I say?
I think you said, I got to go back. I think you said like Romans or Hebrews or something like that. You were close. I mean,
I know it's in Romans or Hebrews. I'm gonna find it. Don't worry.
And while you do that, you were correct. 1 Corinthians 10:31. Therefore, whether you eat or drink or whatever you do, do it all to the glory of God. So you are, man. If you're pitching, it's 500 average. That's not bad.
No, but I'm actually right though.
I don't know. He's reading straight from the word.
What did I say? It's okay. It's all right. We'll let it go. We'll let it go.
The comments, what Winston said.
What I was trying to do.
Put the time mark in.
Yeah.
Nah, but okay. I do appreciate, your time and all this. I don't know if I'll be able to find this in time.
I think you should just focus.
Yeah. But no, I do definitely appreciate your time to like come out and like talk to me about this. And I think that it is helpful to have these types of conversations at adult ages with more healed minds. So I appreciate you, man.
For sure. Let's do this again in 5 years when we're
fully
better. Yeah,
absolutely. Okay. Hey, y'all, thank you guys for tuning in again to this episode of TDY. Thanks for putting on your biblical bifocals with us and diving into difficult conversations. I love you guys. Please make sure to subscribe and do all the YouTube stuff. All right. Peace.